So we were talking about Kemmerer, small town, nothing there. I don't know what the population was before the power
It's
plant.
about 2,500.
Pre-power
Pretty
plant.
small, yeah.
So what was there?
It was just a stopping point for me. Where I was headed east.
Okay.
We're going to create a network of small towns that need housing. We've got about 25 cities that we're creating, and Kemmerer was just where I stayed for the night. Hadn't planned on
gas station.
You got a couple gas stations.
Okay. And that's so in my mind. A lot of the people in small towns. Whenever you go to one of those meetings, it's either they want some development, they want investment, or they just want to keep it the same.
Right.
They don't want any change. For them to approve a nuclear power plant, I believe they already had a coal power plant, right?
Yeah.
And they're just switching that over to nuclear.
Right.
What would make a small town want to do that?
Well, one of the things I'm seeing, at least in 3 states right now, is state legislation. Okay. Affordable housing has become such a problem in so many places. We're seeing states pass legislation that mandates that multifamily be allowed as a use by right in some or all of the commercial zones. So imagine going into a city and all the commercial zones, and maybe there's 2 or 3 or all of them. These are now jackpots for multifamily. Most people don't even know this is happening, and it's happening in at least 3 states that I know about.
Yeah. Did you feel like when you heard that, are the states looking at the commercial because cities are so... Like in my experience with commercial, it's almost like they do commercial because they're like, we want the tax revenue or nothing at all.
Right.
And so you're seeing the states are specifically targeting commercial. And is it usually like a mixed
Well, I think
use,
there's a couple of reasons for it. Reason number one is it's the best place when you consider a buffer against the lower density residential stuff. The second reason is it's a great place to put it. It disturbs businesses less. In fact, you can make the case that they will frequent the businesses.
Yeah.
The third thing is everybody loves walkable space. Everybody loves people where the product is, where the opportunity to purchase is. And some of them are doing an amalgam of, you have to have multifamily in some of these commercial spaces, and some are saying we're going to do mixed. So we'll do mixed, which is a problem because mixed is hard to finance. It's hard to get leased out at the end with the commercial side of it.
That's interesting you bring up the financing side because they always bring that up. And I've seen that some lenders, they only want a certain amount of the income coming from the commercial, or they only want a certain amount of the space. I think that some of the larger backers for financing, they don't want more than like 40% to be commercial.
Right.
And if you can't get a loan that way, you don't get very good financing.
No, you don't.
My project in Payson was pretty hard to fill the commercial, and we filled all the apartments. By the time we had the certificate of occupancy, we had them all filled within about like a week and a half.
Right.
But the commercial sat for about a year.
Yeah.
I mean, probably 10 months.
It's not uncommon.
So you have mixed use and some commercial in your project in Ogden. And have you started trying to lease any of that out?
No, but we've taken a different approach, if I can kind of expound on that. Yeah. One of the things that we do is we make sure that we have enough apartments that if the commercial space doesn't, or the retail space doesn't lease imminently, it's a small enough space that we can use it internally for additional amenity space. So in essence, we're underwriting the project as if there's no retail or commercial space.
Oh, that's
The
interesting.
debt's included, but the income is not. The income's a bonus.
Yeah.
So if we have to, worst case, we have our property management firm there. We might have an additional amenity space there. We might add some additional things to the other amenities that we have until such time comes that we can get a viable commercial team.
And that's probably like a top 10 street in the state for commercial.
Yeah, when you're talking about Union Walk in downtown,
Yeah.
we won't have trouble leasing that.
Okay.
Everybody that steps on that site just falls in love with it immediately.
Yeah. I know that the office that you have now, what maybe was a commercial requirement or non-residential requirement, they turned into some offices and then storage units. Have you thought about doing something like that?
So when I saw that, a friend of mine did that project. I thought it was brilliant that they did that. And the code in Springville actually allowed for that to happen. However, before they had a CO, the city went in and changed the code. They didn't like it immediately. And I think part of it is you can see the storage units from the outside, which I don't have any idea why they didn't do windows that hid the vista of those storage units. But it's a great combination. I don't know that it justifies the income per square foot of the cost, but it certainly is better than offices that sat there. I've been there a few years now, and there were open offices for years around us.
Well, because they're not even on the front of the street.
Right.
So like if you wanted any type of curb appeal, the only people that are seeing it are the tenants.
Yeah.
Did the actual storage space fill pretty fast?
I didn't keep real good tabs on that, but some of the tenants that we've talked to, occasionally we have tenants wander in by accident. They think we're the property management firm. And they seem to like it just fine. And I think when they built some bigger apartments there, and I think some of them, they just threw a unit in.
Oh,
and I don't know if that was at an enhanced rent.
Yeah.
Or it was, we got to get this rented up.
Yeah.
And then we'll circle back to income later. But it seemed to be pretty full. And then I know they allow outside people to store there too, which I don't know how that's done or if it's advertised.
Yeah. It's a very unique project that you don't see a lot of, but storage is like such a hot segment of real estate. That
it is, yeah.
Just makes you wonder if there's a play for that. But most cities don't like storage because there's not any real tax gain on it.
Yeah.
So
it's not always the best looking product either.
Yeah. Another question about small towns and like Kemmerer. Do you think that one of the reasons why, beyond any type of state mandates, is if you don't have a ton of people, maybe the people that are in some of these positions own a lot of land. And so they're looking at it thinking, well, if they put a nuclear plant here and they have to go hire 3,000 or 4,000 people and I own a quarter of all the land here, I'm going to be really wealthy. Do you think that's?
I think there's some of that. I don't know if it's as rampant as I sometimes tend to believe.
Yeah.
I have kind of a jaded eye when it comes to politicians. But I don't know. I think it makes it hard for elected officials to profit, especially when someone finds out. That's always out in the open.
Yeah.
It's always a big deal. So I think there's probably some of that. But again, if it's good for the town, it's good for the town. I've been in meetings before where a city councilman will say, I have such and such an interest. I'm going to recuse myself from this vote. And I thought that was high integrity that they did that because this would obviously benefit me. I own some land here and I'm going to recuse myself.
Yeah.
So there's ways around it. And if it makes sense, it makes sense.
I always wonder, though, when somebody recuses themselves, if they haven't already talked to everybody about it, or they're like,
they've been in the back room with all the meetings, and those guys have influence.
Yeah.
And usually I've been, I don't know how many dozens of city councils I've been in front of, and there's always one or two that have the power. There's one or two that everyone kind of defers to.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have two lightning rods where there's opposite ends of the spectrum on two of them. And it's fun. It's kind of fun to watch the power play and then go at it and how you're going to approach it and how you're going to present to it so that it works.
It seems like over time, and I didn't know you when you were first doing development. I've only known you since you've been probably in the last 9-8 years. And maybe you did this before, but it looks like you spend a lot of time trying to educate some of these elected officials of like what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Yeah.
Because most of them don't have any experience in this.
Yeah, they don't. In fact, that we practice kind of a program called Use by Right, where we only go typically to do multifamily or mixed use where it's allowed by law. And because it's allowed by law, they can't deny it. They can kind of tell you how, but those codes and ordinances are set before you get there.
Yeah.
They tell you how, but they can't tell you if.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time educating. Like I just got a project passed where we did a developer agreement. We were essentially amending the code. And I thought this is going to be interesting because there was a city councilor that is staunchly opposed to multifamily, staunchly opposed to mixed use. So I said, this is going to be interesting. And she talked, we were there 3.5 hours at the meeting, and she talked between the 5 city councilors that were there, probably 85% of the time was her talking. So it was interesting to present to her, and I stood up, and the education was different, and my presentation was very, very different than all the others that we saw that night. And for that, we got a unanimous approval, including her.
So you basically focused on what she needed to understand, or
I mean, you go in with your guns loaded, and I basically said, hey, we're not here tonight to decide if we're going to do this project. This project's approved. It's legislated. The city council at a former time has approved this zone. We're going to do the project. Tonight, the question is, how well will the project be done? And I'm going to present to you good and better. And let me show you why I believe what we're doing is better than what your code is. And we've submitted a developer's agreement for your consideration that passed unanimously at the Planning Commission. And if you're interested in continuing that thought, then we'll get it approved tonight.
And then you got
And the other benefit was this was one of 4 projects that we're looking at. And I made note to them, hey, the other projects that are also mixed-use projects, we're not asking for these exceptions. We're going to the letter of your law. But this particular place doesn't lend itself well to the code that's been attached to it. And they agreed wholeheartedly.
So, and you talk about this a lot in your book, the use by right. And as long as you're sticking with that, you're protected. I've had situations before where cities, I feel, will take a lot of liberties, even if you're legally allowed to do something. And I had a situation that was dealing with parking, and they just kept pushing it out. And I said, look, guys, like, I know you approved these businesses with 0 parking. I own all the parking, and I'm legally allowed to build this. So I can keep working with you, or we can get an attorney that will keep this going. But like, you have to let me do this. I own the parking. You already approved these other businesses without parking, and that's not even legal.
Right.
And the project from there went really fast.
Yeah.
but you know, I try to be nice, but they're very stressful sometimes. And
Well, the way I always put that is I go and say, hey, I've fully vetted this project with our attorneys. And they have reviewed forward and backwards, up and down, your codes, requirements, conditions, and restrictions. And this is a flawless submission. This is a flawless submission. And as you know, in Utah, that means it gets a rubber stamp. So do you have any questions? And I'm basically setting the tone of you're going to accept this, or we're going to do it the hard way.
Yeah. Yeah. So you target use by right. What's a situation where you did a zone change?
You know, those are pretty rare. We have done a few of them over the years, but as good as I think we are, we only have about a 50% success rate.
Yeah.
And part of the
Which
reason—
is still pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Part of the reason is that anywhere we go, anywhere we'd ever try a zone change, it's because the city begged for it and said they would support it. And the staff, we need this desperately. And this is what we've got to have. We've got to have this. And it's interesting, in zone changes, you have public hearings either 2 or 4 times. If there's a plat, it's preliminary plat, public hearing, preliminary plat, public hearing at Planning Commission and City Council, and final plat, public hearing, Planning Commission, City Council. And it's interesting that some projects, the support against it, or the opposition to it, I should say, wells up. And by the time you get to a 4th crack for these guys,
after you've already spent money and time and everyone's
you can
like,
be 100, 200 grand into these bigger projects. And the bigger ones, you can be $500,000 into them. So it's very painful to get down the road. And then you watch the city staff blatant and outright support wane, dwindle, and then lastly disappear.
Yeah.
Seen it again and again.
Yeah. Yeah, my next question was going to be, I was going to ask you one that have blown up, but we kind of just talked about that. Yeah, it's so risky because even a project that is approved that still runs into issues, you spend money on.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are too worried, like they're too scared to get into a deal because they don't want to lose money. But a lot of the times, even like the drafting of basic that I can submit to the city for preliminary is from a drafter is like 15 grand.
Yeah.
And that's not even like anything real yet. The next step's like 50 to 100.
Yeah.
And like I had that project down in Santa Quin, and even with everything, you still get things that come up out of nowhere.
Right.
And we had to get a crash gate and spend 20 grand on a crash gate and pay, and we had to pave the neighbor's whole asphalt trailer court. And that was like just because one person changed, a different fire chief came in.
Yeah.
So what do you do? What do you anticipate to try to avoid surprises? Because you're always going to have them.
Yeah. Well, the first thing you got to do is you got to know the law. I can't tell you how many times someone has tried to saddle one of my developments with something that is outside their legal ability to do so. And that's why the use by right thing is crucial to us. So there's 2 use by rights in Utah, for example. There's the actual zone, and then conditional use permits where they're available are now use by rights. And it's gone to the state Supreme Court.
That's statewide.
Statewide. A conditional use, they have to grant a conditional use. Now, the question becomes, do they condition it to death, which some of them are inclined to do. And there's even that has been legislated as well, that they have to be reasonable in standard conditions. So if they start to get difficult, then we bring in the big guns. I had that happen on a big project in Clearfield where they wanted to make some changes. It was a conditional use permit. And they started making change after change after change. And my attorney did the rest of the presentations. And he's the best in the business. And they backed down. And we got it through and it went great. So
it's just incredible sometimes because you start thinking like, it's hard not to take it personally.
Yeah.
They're getting so ugly because they do. There's a lot of times where they get really ugly. I've been yelled at before in meeting. You're like, I'm not trying to fight you. I just like, I can do this.
Yeah. Well, we had a situation, we're doing 100plex in Ogden right now. And 25 years ago, a property down the street about 75 yards and across the street decided they had a drainage problem. There's no city drainage facility there. So they piped without city approval. They ran a pipe under the road into the field that we bought for our project. And they drained there for 25 years. Well, we take the project in with our full civil set, and the city says, you're going to handle that water. You are responsible for that water. And I said, no, we're not. I said, yes, we are. And I said, if you have a deed restriction that says I'm responsible for that, or a prior owner written consent that wasn't disclosed to me in my purchase, I'll consider that. Otherwise, we're not touching it. That's your problem. And they said, we will not take any submissions from you on this project until you agree to do that. And I said, that's outside the law, and you know it is, and we're not going to do that. So my attorneys will be in touch. My attorney had literally a 15-minute phone call with them, and they backed down from that. And we didn't have to do that. But they try to do that often, where they saddle you with things that you're not legally responsible for. And it's crucial that you know the law, especially if you're going to be in the bigger projects, because they think, oh, gosh, if I make these guys do this or I make them do that, that's nothing to them. And it absolutely, every dollar counts on any size of a project.
Especially right now.
Yeah.
With rates.
Oh, it's a financing? Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow.
And I could tell you story after story after story like that.
Yeah.
Where they thought, hey, we're gonna get the greedy developer, we're gonna get the rich developer to handle all the facilities. And in Utah, they don't have the right to ask for you to do any offsite work that doesn't directly impact your project. So if I had to bring a gas line in through the street, I'd have to patch the street, but they can't make me patch all the 7 prior gas lines that were brought in that someone didn't patch correctly. They can't make me do that.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
So what did they end up doing with that water?
I have no idea, and I don't care.
They had to deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which they were probably, I imagine they figured out a way that the city dealt with it, because it can't go and put it on the other owner at that point, right?
No, that other owner would say, I didn't cause that, I didn't do that. That was a prior owner to me. And so we're putting curb, gutter, and sidewalk on a street that doesn't have curb, gutter, and sidewalk on either side. So I'm guessing it'll just percolate up into the curb and gutter and run to one end of the property or the other. And then we'll end up causing the city to handle it in a more professional way. So
I know that when you have a topic that you feel like you need to learn, that you will study it to death.
Yeah.
When you get into these tricky situations, especially with the city and what they're legally able to ask you to do you feel like, I guess, what amount of the time are you leaning on your attorney? Or by then, have you already determined they can't do this? I'm going to get the attorney to basically get him to say, yeah, it's going to go forward to a lawsuit if you guys don't allow us to. Is that like your way of showing?
So no, I have, probably between, 7 or 8 really big projects going in some form or fashion here, and others that are owned and finished. And I probably only ask my attorney's opinion a couple times a year, because I've done this long enough that I know the issues. The attorney comes in when I get pushed back against, and they say, we don't care what you think. And I respond, that's not what I think. It's the law. Yeah. And if I need to get an attorney in here, I will. And once you do that once, the city's okay. Yeah. We can't push this guy around. So you've got to have a super good attorney. And mine is very expensive, very expensive. I think he's the best in the country at what he does. But it's worth every penny of the brain damage, of my time. Can you imagine how engrossed you could get in a dumb little thing like that on a $26 million project?
Yeah.
a drain from the neighbor from 25 years ago, and that's going to derail your project. So there's things that you delegate and you let other people handle in their area of expertise. That allows you to go to where your specialties are.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like a lot of times when I've got an attorney involved, I end up writing all the letters and then they just stamp them and send them out. And I'm like, I just paid you guys $30,000 and I did 90% of the work.
Yeah.
So I know this is one of my favorite books. This is where I started. And my thinking about this we met, it was about 8 years ago. And Mitch Price was the one that got me to your little training. I think you were jumping back in.
Yep.
And it was $1,000. And that $1,000 got a bunch of your Friday and Saturday trainings. And I think I went to 6 or 7 of them. I was pretty cheap, but I did spend $1,000. Probably the best return on my coaching, probably the best return that anybody's gotten on coaching just about ever.
Yeah.
But my whole perspective when I jumped into this was I saw what was happening here in Utah. I saw the growth, and I thought, if I'm going to invest in any type of skill, this is a skill that I want to be in. This is something that I want to be in. I want to be looking for highest and best use. I want to be looking for development. And then your other book, Buying Real Estate Without a Bank, Seller Financing, that's actually my favorite book.
Yeah.
And
they're great books.
That's been huge for me. I think development and the ability to creative finance, I think, are the superpowers in real estate. I don't think people talk about it enough. I know Pace Morby now is getting really big on subject to and creative finance, but with multifamily, I started looking at multifamily that people didn't really want that bad.
Yeah.
And purchasing on seller finance notes, and it's made me a lot of money. And they're not always in bad areas. I purchased one of the communities, one of the manufactured home communities in Heber. And what's so interesting about that project is it has a well. And so the owner was worried about this well because the state, the Division of Drinking Water, was really getting on them because they hadn't been testing it and they hadn't been doing anything to become compliant.
Right.
And so the EPA was getting at them. And that's one thing that's a little scary is like, I didn't know exactly what I was getting into, but I was willing to work through it. And I felt pretty strongly that they wouldn't kick 10 families off of 10 affordable housing units off of water, kick them out of their units. And so I took a little bit of risk on that, but I've owned it now about 4 years, and we got approved for a grant to go and switch to the city water.
Yeah, and someone else is paying for it.
Yeah, and it's just, you say this sometimes in your training that, you thank everybody for paving the roads and taking care of the parks, and I don't think people understand that real estate is really the only type of vehicle with the tax structure that exists in our country.
Yeah, it's very unique that way.
And some of these zero down seller finance deals, I went and did cost seg on them, cost segregation. And even though I put zero down, I was able to write off $250,000, $300,000 year one.
Yeah.
I'm as I'm going, I'm learning. And what's so interesting is the techniques that you talk about in your books. And then I go and put them in practice. And then I find these other little golden nuggets that are maybe a few tiers more complex that somebody wouldn't know, right? That you didn't cover in the book. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't have to pay taxes legally.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Because I'm buying real estate. I imagine some of these bigger deals, the amount of depreciation that you are accumulating is
staggering.
Tens of millions of dollars.
Staggering numbers. And it looks like they're going to re-up the rapid depreciation 10-year schedule again. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, it's been a boon for sure. There's no other business in the world that I'm aware of that has the set of benefits that real estate has.
Yeah.
And I love the highest and best use mindset. Because literally we're creating a generation of tenants. There's going to be so many people that can't purchase homes. And it's not just the United States. If you look at super established countries, in Europe, for example, the percentage of home ownership is much, much lower the older a country gets. So who wouldn't want to be in the rental business?
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to own properties that people will be forced to live in? They're going to pay off your mortgage and they're going to pay you. So it's a no-brainer for me to be all in on this.
So and I see this, and Grant Cardone talks about that a lot, right? Where there's going to be, the majority of people will be renters.
Yeah.
Is that part of the problem with housing, or is that a symptom of other issues that are happening? Because I think people do want to own. Right now, it's very unaffordable because the rates are so high. Whereas a few years ago, it seemed like everyone could buy a house.
Yeah.
As long as they had a job and okay credit, right?
They could buy 3 or 4 houses.
They could buy yeah. And then you look at during the recession, people could just get, bank statement loans and
no income, no credit loans.
Yeah.
They had all kinds of gimmicky loans out there.
So if you were the king of the United States and you were tasked with figuring out housing, what would be your strategy? What would you look to do that you believe would be the solution, the best solution to fix our housing shortage? I think we're over 1 million housing units short in the United States.
Oh, easily. Yeah, I think for me it'd be a combination of tax benefits to the individual, meaning, gosh, I think that the federal government could take a percentage of low-income earners' taxes and sock them away in an account for a down payment at a future time for a homeowner. So the government gets those taxes, controls them, makes money on the taxes. But at a point, a person generates, like we're supposed to be generating Social Security benefits. Yeah. We can generate a down payment benefit within the first number of years of paying taxes. And the longer you pay taxes, the better of a down payment benefit that you have. Second one is there could be subsidized interest rates for new home buyers. You look at what FHA and HUD programs are for multifamily. And FHA is supposed to be a good program for first-time home buyers, but it doesn't really address the interest rate. The down payment's better, but the interest rate's not much better. So there could be subsidies that way. I mean, can you imagine saying, hey, 10% of your taxes for the next 10 years goes to subsidizing an interest rate? So it buys the rate down for you on an FHA loan, and there's a calculator and a spreadsheet that determines what your interest rate is on your first 30-year loan.
Yeah.
So there's ways, I think, that the government could step in and help. And gosh, they help everyone else in the world. Why aren't we helping first-time home buyers more than we have?
Yeah.
Right? I think there'd be some easy ways to structure that.
So down payments become an issue more so when you have rates that are high, right? But I guess at the same time, the people that are able to put a down payment together are the ones that maybe can pay at a little bit of a higher interest rate.
Yeah.
When the rates were low, you had a lot of like Utah housing products. You had a lot of zero down programs. If you remember like the Chenoa grant that was out there. I mean, it's still around, but Utah housing, before the new version that they just came out with, it was a second mortgage, and it was 2 percentage points higher. And people were always a little hesitant about it, but it was a smaller loan amount. So they were like, okay, it's like $50 a month, but it was like 6-7% interest. And now it's like, if they did the same exact thing, it'd be like 9%.
Yeah.
And most, if not all, first-time home buyers, they're just completely priced out.
Well, yeah, and I think you make an either or. It could be a down payment, or it could be a reduction in interest rate. It could be a buy down for an interest rate, but it's a function of paying taxes.
Yeah.
And what percentage of taxes and what tax bracket you're in. Somebody could put that together, and I think it would work very, very well to get people in homes. The other thing is there's got to be some kind of a limitation on the Blackstones of the world who are buying all the homes. You can't just have the massive corporate companies buying tens of thousands of homes all over the place. It leaves a harder path for those that want to buy what's left over. Yeah, it really does.
We talk a lot about inventory being tight. Even right now, we talk about it being tight, but we're in a funny market because rates are high, and so people are not able to qualify as much, but homes are still selling. But our unit count is not really that great. Do you think that, in supply and demand, you're right, you have just the straightforward equation of if you have more housing units, it'll bring housing costs down. And I think we saw that with the multifamily that was built in Salt Lake County. And probably also in Utah County as well, where they put online thousands of these high-density multifamily units, these apartments, and you saw rents soften a little bit. Now they're not really pulling the same permits that they were at the same rate because rates are so high.
Right.
It seems like just the way that we structure our real estate in our country it almost feels like it's always like a boom or bust type feel.
Yeah.
And so we never build enough housing.
Yeah, I mean, when they build the surplus, it's because there's a massive demand and it gets filled. And when it's hard to build because of financing, like right now, financing's tough, they underbuild. So I think you're right. I think they're underbuilt most of the time. And
then until rates come down. I mean, rates are going to come down eventually. And when they come down, we're going to have this huge demand again.
Yeah, they didn't come down yesterday.
They didn't come down. Yeah, even with all the
25
tweets from
cents would have
Trump.
made a difference, but
yeah.
It's unbelievable what those guys do in Washington. It's unbelievable.
What's interesting to me is I feel like if you are a pilot or you're a boat captain, you make incremental changes where you want to go. You're not doing like a 180, right? You're not even doing like a 60-degree turn. You're just doing little digit, adjustments. You have the United States economy, which is even bigger than any boat or plane, and Jerome Powell is known now for being the guy that goes in and raises it 100 basis points or lowers it 100 or 200. And no one's ever done that before. I don't quite understand why, unless it's political, which that's what people are talking about.
Yeah.
I don't fully understand why he doesn't do a small adjustment, even if it was at 10 basis points.
I don't know why he doesn't do a big one. I mean, there's so many countries that have their rates are half or less of what ours is, and they're functioning just fine, and their economy's not as robust. And I get it. Look, when the economy's robust, the thinking is keep the rate high. So if the economy struggles and we have a recourse, which is to lower rates and stimulate the economy. But so many people are being hurt by this.
Yeah.
So many people can't buy a home. So many people can't afford the interest rates. There's an underbelly to this that's super difficult. Just because lots and lots of money is coming from offshore now based on the interest in the development here in the United States doesn't mean we're all prosperous. Doesn't mean that everyone is prosperous and people can buy homes. And I think that's the American dream, is to get people in homes. That should be a stronger focal point for the government, for sure.
If you had a crystal ball, this is one of those crystal ball questions, how long do you think the economy could survive if rates aren't cut? If there's no change, do you think we just keep going like we are now, or do you think some of those rate buy downs would start creating more pressure?
Well, in my business, a lot of the lenders are on the sidelines. We have a project in Moab that's unbelievable, 119 units, beautiful location. There's no housing. There's such a housing shortage in Moab, right? And we have gone out to 60, 70 lenders, and we've probably gotten 8 or 9 or 10 term sheets. And that sounds like a really neat formula there until you realize that the groups that are willing to submit a term sheet are submitting terms that you would look at and say, tell me you don't want to lend without telling me that you don't want to lend. And I think a big part of that, and all the studies I've done the last couple of years have been brutal getting larger construction loans. There's the brokers and everyone you talk to say, it's just the uncertainty. There's this constant uncertainty. There's uncertainty. There's constant uncertainty. And at a point, all the money that's on the sideline that's not being lent is not making anybody any money.
Yeah.
These guys can't exist long-term not lending. This is the business you're in. Tell a contractor, hey, you can make as much money as you want, not building homes. How does that work? Tell a baker, hey, you don't get a bake for the next 2 years, but you'll do fine. You'll do fine. So it's just these lenders will have this money on the sideline, or the place they're taking it from. It's got to give, whether rates change or not. And listen, with what the Fed is at right now, if they just came out and said, we don't plan on doing a rate change for the next 5 years, that would be stabilizing.
Yeah.
More people would lend in that scenario. So it's the constant, we're not sure. It's the constant, we might do this, we might do that I think is more unsettling to the markets than anything else.
Yeah.
The other problem with the markets, this is if there's an expectation of a 25 bip drop or a 50 bip drop or a 50 bip increase, the markets build it in a month, 2 months, 3 months sometimes before it happens.
Yeah.
So the change comes, and it's already a train that left the station months ago.
Yeah.
So they build these things in, and it's all backwards to me. I think this could be fixed and changed literally immediately. And I think we could have an explosive economy. See, if you came in and dropped the rate 1%, said, we're going to stay here for the next 2 years. We will not change rates. We want stability. We want consistency. We want no guessing. We want this is the way we're going to do it.
Yeah.
I think things would go nuts. I really do.
Just by
Even with
having some
1%.
certainty, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the certainty as much as anything. Give us a little something on a breakaway for rates. Because I'll tell you, when you get that Fed where they're at on the rates, I'm getting construction loans right now that are 800, 900, 1,000 bips above LIBOR, for example, or above the Fed.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, 8% above something, it should just be 8%. It should be 8% above whichever index you're picking.
Yeah.
Right? It should be 8% for a construction loan. And that's just not the world we live in.
So even if they didn't make any adjustments to rates, the private sector would have to make adjustments regardless, because like we were talking about all that money on the side, people need to deploy the capital. They can go and throw it into a CD, but they'd still be better off matching what rates are above a CD.
Right.
Like even if that was it. And they make a lot of other fees as well. So it's not like...
Oh, they make a ton on fees.
Yeah.
I mean, we have some term sheets coming in right now that are 3.5 points in and 1 point out. And we're 800 bips above whichever index we're talking about. And you sit there and you think, these guys need to lend to stay in business. And they grill you to death and review you to death. So they're not going to have to foreclose on you, but their loan offer is something that makes being foreclosed on, if everything doesn't go right, a real possibility if you're not structured correctly.
Yeah.
It's almost a lose-lose.
And they're not extremely long-term typically.
No.
So, which is a double-edged blade, right? Because sometimes you like the certainty of knowing where it's going to be, but if it's like a 5-year, where I think there's a lot of multifamily that's coming up around that time now, I mean...
Listen, I don't know how there's not been more foreclosures that are talked about on multifamily construction, because some of the markets that we see are very slow in lease up. Some of them have had very high interest rates. We've got a lot of contractors out there that aren't performing. We've got a lot of contractors that expanded in the last burst, the last growth cycle. And they have people standing in places doing jobs that they aren't qualified to. And the people above them watching them aren't qualified to train. Or, I mean, you see guys that are a PM on a job and they end up being a regional executive for another construction company, and they were a PM for 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
Or even a site super gets to be a regional executive because there's just no one else.
Yeah.
And that's just, I see that again and again. We've had more trouble with contractors and professionalism and performing timely than I've seen in my whole career.
Do you think part of that is, so in 2008 market crashes, nobody's building for years. Now, well, I guess like pre-2020, you saw that ramping up. We finally started building enough here in Utah. We started building enough to keep up with demand. But a lot of the people from the Great Recession, they never got back in.
Right.
So we lost all of that talent that had been built up for decades. And now you get people that are like my age just starting random construction companies. Like they buy an excavation machine with an SBA loan and they just say, I can dig a hole.
Yeah. Well, the bigger problem is when you have an expansion in single-family homes, for example, or even something as innocuous as townhomes.
Yeah.
Anybody that's a contractor can handle that and figure it out, right? That's not a big jump. But when housing is somewhat flat and multifamily explodes and mixed use explodes, the jump from building a home, the jump from finishing a basement, the jump from building a 4-plex to a 100-plex that has a mixed use component it's astronomical. These guys think they can get in. I get calls every day from guys that say, oh gosh, I just built a Burger King and I do commercial and I did some storage sheds. I know I can build a 100-plex.
Yeah.
No, you can't.
Yeah, I'm just even thinking about just like the weight load is totally different.
Oh, yeah, especially when you have non-matching floor plates.
Yeah, we had to do a big steel beam in our building down in Payson, a big one, like huge.
Massive.
And now I know why you avoid
That's
steel.
not yeah.
But like me thinking about this contractor and I'm like, where did he learn to do this? Did he learn
It's
here?
even worse because the engineers don't know and the architects don't know. We have a mixed use project that we're doing in one of our cities, and we got all the steel done, and we were halfway framed, and we realized that the engineer hadn't called out 12 steel posts. And there were other posts that died into the concrete, and they hadn't had footings poured under them. So we immediately noticed this, and we're like, what the heck? And you go back to the plans, and they're not drawn right. These were reviewed by a second engineer. They were stamped by the city, and we're missing 12 load paths. 12 load paths with a well-heeled general contractor with a reputable engineer. And then the city goes through their whole process.
Yeah.
And this is a special project. So the city had a third-party engineer review it on top of everyone else's review. And everyone missed it. And we're standing around saying...
So how did that get caught? You just walking around and...
Well, there's a way that you fasten those steel posts into
Yeah.
a footing. And you typically can do it a couple of ways. But when you put the steel post in that supports the beams and the fasteners aren't there... And the way that the mechanisms for attaching, you don't just set it on top of a footing, right? There's a couple of ways that works. And when those pieces aren't in place, you start asking questions and you start taking the plans apart, and all of a sudden, and the funny thing was we were halfway framed and the city didn't even notice. The city didn't even catch it.
What's scary about that is like, it's one thing if they mess up on a paint color.
Right.
Or a dishwasher doesn't work, right? You might not find out that that's built incorrectly until it's an earthquake.
Right. But I tell you what, you have a steel beam or post that carries 5 stories of weight and it's not on a footing, you're going to find out soon.
Yeah, I imagine you'd have massive settling. You'd have, because since you have it's fastened in there.
This is isolated enough that we would have seen floor cracks, and we would have
really fast.
Seen cracks in the sheetrock well before significant damage would have done. And having been in this business a long time, you can go back in and shore those things up, and there's shoring plans. And
it's expensive.
It's expensive, but you can put hydraulics in place and get that taken care of. You can open up the floor and pour the footings retro. It's painful and it's ugly, but it's not as egregious as some of the things that I've seen. But the whole point is everybody missed it. Everybody missed it. And the steel guys caught it. The steel guys. How far down the line are they on a project like this?
Yeah, I mean, by that point, you've already poured a lot of cement.
Yeah, there was an expensive cost for the guys that missed that.
So I imagine on every project, you're going to have something. You just try to minimize what that thing is the best you can.
Yeah.
And the contingency is usually only like 10%.
Well, the problem is most of what gets used in a contingency shouldn't be.
Yeah.
If a contractor makes a mistake, it shouldn't come out of your contingency. It should come out of the contractor's pocket. If an engineer makes a mistake, you generally have 2 problems. So we've had some engineering issues over the years. You walk the project, and either it was drawn perfectly, and the engineer and the general contractor didn't build it right, or it was drawn terribly, and the general contractor built it according to plans, or some of both.
Yeah.
And those are the people that are supposed to be responsible for that. The owner shouldn't pay for that. Every builder, if you're a good builder, you get really good at making the owner believe everything is their fault. Interesting that you hire all these professionals all the way across the board, but it's your fault.
Yeah.
Everything is your fault. I had one builder, I said, man, I sit in an office 2 hours from here. I don't know how I made these mistakes. This is crazy to me that I did these things wrong here. And
some of these bigger projects, as scary as they sound like a lot of fun. And seeing you swimming in that swimming pool, testing them out, making sure that they're not losing water. I didn't see with goggles though, looking around.
I love water, and I got a campaign going right now. If you want to swim in a swimming pool, come learn how to develop a project that has a swimming pool. And you can own your own swimming pool via a project. And that is fun. I tell you what, you tend to forget. It's like they say when women bear children, there's something that causes them to forget the pain and difficulty they go to. So a year, 2 years, 3 years later, they'll have another child. It's almost the same with producing a multifamily project. It's brutal. You get done with that and you say to yourself, I don't know if I want to be in this business. And then you drive by it a few times and for 6 months and a year and, that's the best building ever.
Yeah.
So you forget, but it is something to finish one of those. It is something.
You know what? My moment of realization on all of these properties that I've been hanging on to is I'm going through the process of these cash out refis. And what got me thinking about even doing them, because I have low rates on a lot of them, 3.5%.
Yeah.
I mean, might not see that in a long time, if ever, right? And you had that training up in Salt Lake. And that was one of the questions that I kept asking you about trying to figure this out. You talked about how you will pull equity out to have liquidity to be ready for projects. You park it somewhere that has high interest, as high interest as you can, where it's still liquid. And then you're really borrowing at a 2 to 3% rate.
Right.
Which is a pretty good
It's a
rate.
differential.
Yeah. And right now I'm getting cash out refi quotes of 7 to 7.25%, and very low closing costs, which is great because lenders really want to do loans.
Yeah.
And so they get really aggressive. And I'm looking at doing 7 houses and then a few mobile home parks.
Yeah. I'm waiting for you to do that.
So yeah, and it's what I'm getting at is I've only pulled money out of 3 homes ever pre-COVID. I mean, it was like the end of 2020.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. I pulled out like 140 grand. I thought, oh, this is so great. But now in these houses, I'm looking at like over 900.
Yeah.
And it's a whole, like even emotionally, I felt different about it, realizing that actually like I could have that money in my bank account because I've been so lean. I've been like such a fighter on these properties. Like, how can I do this? It was spending the
I'll
least
tell you what,
amount
it's
of
hard. It's hard to know how much cash to hold. And when you get in my business, they all want to see cash on hand.
Yeah.
You qualify for these big mortgages, and they want to see cash on hand that matches the required down payment for the asset. So you might have $5, $7, $10, $15 million required down to get a loan, and they want to see matching liquidity in your account, which is really a dancing.
Yeah.
It's a dancing bear keeping up with all of that.
Did you have any moments where on any of these projects or past projects where you got a pretty big payout? Maybe one of your first ones where you hadn't been pulling money out on anything and you just kept growing your portfolio, and then you actually had it where like money actually hit your account, and you're like, was that like a shocking realization for you that it's real?
Well, I got where I was at such a young age because we just parlayed everything. Everything went to the next thing, and I could tell you, I bought a little house. It was 1,120 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath on a basement. My first mortgage payment was $940, and I was making probably between $300,000 and $400,000 a year pre my investments.
Yeah.
And people would come to visit me, and they'd look at my house, and then they'd think of my portfolio. And what are you doing? And everything was, I want to build for the future. I always believed I could have the big, nice house anytime I want. Mm-hmm. I can do that anytime I want. But what I can't build constantly with this momentum is you want to just keep building and adding and building and adding. And yeah, looking back after 30 years of that strategy, you kind of want to say, hey, I should have a war chest of funds somewhere. I should have some money off to the side. I should have, and not that we don't, right? But being in these bigger projects kind of forces you to do that, to have some liquidity, which has been helpful, especially in this downturn, because not all the projects have gone the way that you hope that they do.
Mm-hmm. Well, you went from having that massive portfolio, go through the recession, lost just about everything, and have been building your way back up. From doing that, does that also make you feel like I need to have some level of liquidity that I can access if I need to, or what changed?
Well, I think the big thing there was, I look back at that and I didn't lose almost everything. I lost everything. We had 650 homes and apartments. I had 11 developments going. We had $400,000 a month of net income after all expenses, net income. So I started buying a lot of land based on that number. And one of the big mistakes I made 2 big mistakes going into the crash. The first one is trusting and believing everyone else would perform.
Yeah.
I didn't have the concept.
Partners or tenants or
everyone. Part of the reason I did that, when we wrote these books, you remember I was a seminarist. I used to travel the country. Mm-hmm. We'd sell $15,000 and $18,000 packages, and people would buy them, and they'd put $5,000 down, and they'd make a $500 payment for 20 months. And we'd let them. And they'd go to the classes, and their payments would outlast their classes by a long way. So we ended up having $400,000 of income coming in monthly on credit. This was back when we manually did credit cards. I had a group of ladies at an office the first 7 days of the month. No one went in there. No one bothered them. They ran credit cards until their fingers were raw. And I'll tell you what, it was special to have all of that revenue every month. But when the market crashed, all of those people, we received stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks of bankruptcy notices that all those people that were paying us, who had received all their trainings, by the way, were filing bankruptcy and we weren't going to get paid anymore. So you have this massive freight train of income for years and years. And you just say to yourself,
it's going to be there.
I can count on that. And it grew every month, by the way, until it didn't.
Yeah.
So that turns off and it changes you. You say, I have to compartmentalize myself that I can support and function on what I have and what I can control. And that still doesn't function if rates go to 10%, right? Or 15%. I've got some offers that are in the 14s right now. Construction loans in the 14% range. That we would
really
never
expensive
do.
Hard money.
Yeah, we would never do. So you learn lessons. And I tell you, I learned 12.5 lessons coming out of that we've really tried to.
What would you have done if you would have known the timeline of when things would start unraveling? What are some things you would have done and how would you have done them and when? How far out?
So I look at that because I struggle with that. I struggle how far back would I have stopped doing things the way I was doing them based on what I know now. And now we do things completely differently. There's 5 or 6 things we have in place that are hard stops for us that protect us against those types of things. And here we are in a recession. Here we are in a difficult situation. And those things have served me very well. Had I been set up like I was back in 8, 9, and 10, we would have probably had to fold again. Which is interesting to watch people go through bankruptcy again and again. But we set up so I would probably say, it got really rough for me right around January of 2009. And I think—
Which is about a year after things— after the banks were collapsing. And
when 08 came, I was super excited. I'm like, I'm going to have a field day on this. I'm going to pick up property after property. And that was just me thinking I still had my war chest of capital every month. And I was making decisions based on funds that I was owed. And when I had to go through what I did, there was over probably $10 or $12 million that were owed to me just on payments that weren't attached to any debt, weren't attached to payments on my side. But I had borrowed and purchased properties on that you wouldn't normally purchase at rates that you wouldn't do because you didn't care because you had all this cash flow. Well, the cash flow disappears and the rates don't change. The land drops to half and it's a different animal. So I think to myself, man, I wish I'd have stopped buying land in 2006. I wish I would have focused high on cash flowing assets from there forward. I would have cleared the decks with any raw land that I'd had.
What kind of cash flowing assets are you thinking? Like multifamily specifically?
Yeah, multifamily or even houses. I mean, anything that isn't a debt. I mean, I have a saying, income producing debt, it's in this book, income producing debt is an asset. You own a house, $300,000, $500,000, and you owe whatever, and the payment's half of what you're getting from the rent. You do those all day long and smile each month. But when you owe the payments more than what the income is before the expenses, you can't do that too long, even if you have another source of income somewhere.
So in my situation in these cash outs, there's DSCR loans, there's conventional loans. If you were in my situation, would you pull out as much as you can up to basically what the current payments are? No, I'd probably do a 1.5 DSCR. I'd probably shoot for a 1.5 because rents can drop too. Rents can drop also. So be conservative, but still pull capital out.
I mean, if a bank's going to lend to you at a 1.1 or a 1.25 or 1.20, go and do a 1.4, do a 1.5. You're still going to have equity in that property. You'll still be able to take money out. And then that money will feel freer to you because it's less of a risk of where it's coming from.
What would you do on multifamily, which is a little different because you are diversified more, you have more tenants. I have those mobile home parks that I'm looking at, and a lot of them want like a 125% coverage ratio. So I know in multifamily you see 1.1 all the way up to 1.3, I think is usually that range. Are you pulling out up to that because it's such a big development, you have more diversification with that many units?
Well, the interesting thing for us is we have 3 designations for our properties. So one is a cash flower. And that's one where we want to pay down the mortgage as much as we can. We won't touch it. We'll leave the equity there. And the whole goal of the ownership group is to receive cash flow.
Okay.
Tax benefits, appreciation, mortgage reduction, cash flow, all cash flow is put back against the mortgage. So we're essentially prepaying the mortgage every month, taking years and years and years off. That's a very conservative approach.
Yeah.
Next one we have is, we call them Summa cycles. There's cycles where we take the excess equity. If a property cash flows at an 80% LTV and we're at 60%, we take that 20% out and then we use it in a high leverage, high return multifamily construction project somewhere else. So it makes more money by far if that asset functions than it would have made reducing the mortgage payment had we left it.
Yeah.
So those guys want to pay the properties off too, but they're doing it at a more risky route. And then the last one is sellers, properties that we build and sell. And that keeps the bills paid and keeps things going. You want to always do more projects than you want to keep. I used to keep everything.
Yeah.
Everything. I was a pack rat. And that was a mistake. I should have had a steady sales force, and we could have done things a little bit differently back then.
So with those three pieces, you have cash flow that's consistent every month. But this cash flow is not based on coaching clients, right? Where,
Yeah.
because that was probably a huge amount of just the expected cash flow each month. And then you have properties that you're paying down debt as fast as, that would be the cash flow ones. You're paying down the debt as fast as you can. Then you have properties where you would do cash out refis. You would pull money out. And then you have ones that you're just selling.
That's right.
And it looks like now you're building most of your projects. In the past, I know you've sold a lot of
Entitled ground.
the flixers, right? Where
We made a lot of money doing that too.
entitling land.
Yeah, and we're getting back into that actually. As markets get harder to find property, the entitled stuff becomes much more valuable. Although, as hard as it might be to find a multifamily project, if it's hard to finance them, nobody will buy them.
Yeah. So
You got to be really careful
you
if that's your
talked about
strategy.
using cash, getting investors to just not even have to get financing.
Right.
Have you been able to do that on any of the projects already?
Yeah, so everything we own, the land is 100% free and clear. It's one of our rules. If we purchase land to do a development, the only acceptable debt for that piece of ground ever is a construction loan. So if we buy properties, this is one of the things that happens. We'd buy properties and we'd have massive land debts and we'd leverage up to a high percentage and a high interest rate because we knew that once we did the highest and best use change, that there'd be this new equity position that would create into a lendable situation for construction. And when land collapsed to half, and now we owe 30% above what the property's currently worth, that's a big market. That's a big problem. So now we pay cash for every piece of land we pay cash for, unless there's a seller finance note that collapses into a capital contribution at the time of construction loan, which is a cool way to do that.
Yeah.
A lot of our sellers contribute some of their land proceeds into partnerships, but we literally pay cash. So if in the time frame that it takes to get everything permitted, and all the civils are done, but the time to get the architecturals done, a building permit, acceptable bids from builders, if rates run, if something crazy happens in the marketplace and we can't build, we've got one or two of those. Can't build them. Can't get a loan on them. And the worst case scenario is we pay property taxes every year.
Yeah.
And some of the partners complain.
And even that, they won't take it away right away. So, worst case scenario, you could survive.
Well, there's some states where they can get you in 90 days or less.
That's true. But not here in Utah, right? Utah's
Not
a
here in
little slower.
Utah, yeah.
So, I mean, it seems like over time, you've taken these different lessons, some of them probably pretty painful. And every single deal you do, I can't imagine you're not being reminded, I got to do it this way, because if I don't, I run the risk of other outcomes that you don't want.
Yeah, well, what's interesting in that is you see these deals that present themselves and you say, I'm going to do this textbook to the new guidelines that I created in 2015.
Yeah.
I created this and these are unbendable, they're unbreakable commitments and standards for us. And then the funny part is to watch how those deals push you, and the circumstances push you to bend those guidelines. And to say, it won't matter so much if I do this on this one, or if I do this on this one, that one doesn't matter. I still have everything else in place.
Yeah.
It's bizarre to watch that. And then you have to remember what you went through before, and you slap yourself on the hand.
Yeah.
And go back to the standards that you need to have.
Yeah. Ideally, you don't have to go through any of those situations again because you follow the standards that you've created based on past experience.
Well, and that's a different thing too, because a big part of what caused my portfolio to crash in '08 was so much of it was tethered together. So instead of getting a cash out refi on a home, I had so many properties. Why should I get 30 cash out refis on 30 multifamily projects? Why not get one?
Yeah.
And tie the mortgage to 30 assets. Well, 2 assets out of 30 go bad, and it puts a burden on the rest of the portfolio, or worse, right? So
these like second and third positions.
Sometimes, yeah. Back in the day, they were typically second position. We do equity lines on multifamily properties, which wasn't common, and we did a lot of them.
Yeah.
And now we compartmentalize everything, so no assets touch in any way. There's this property A, property B, and property C. There's nothing that attaches them. There's nothing. So one of the properties goes down for some reason. You look at the flood they just had in Texas. I had a flood in Texas. We had a flood in 2009. Hurricane Ike came, knocked out 60 tenants overnight. 60 tenants could not inhabit our 100 units. We had 2 buildings that had 100 doors, and 60 tenants were gone. And we had insurance guys took a year to come look at that. And what's your recourse there? What are you going to do? Now, if that property is attached to other things.
Yeah, you could really quickly create a domino effect.
Yeah. So the harder, slower way is oftentimes the better one. And I just always was about efficiency. Man, I could submit these 10 properties, and the bank can encumber all 10 of them, and we get one big chunk of equity, and they'll give me more equity because there's 10 assets, and they'll go to a higher LTV, and there's all these justifications, and it just wasn't a good idea.
Yeah. Looking back, is there any one thing that you think you could have done? I mean, if you knew what you know today, including the market going up to where it is now, is there anything you could have done besides just telling people, just hang in there? Like, is there anything you could have done?
You know, I really tried to negotiate out as much as I could, but once there was blood in the water, and once everybody realized how bad the market was and what was going on, and a lot of people had put capital in as investors back then that they didn't have. They were over-leveraged in their own personal life. So it didn't matter
like
what
HELOCs,
I said.
right?
Yeah, HELOCs are a great example. HELOCs, or you take every penny in the world that you have, and then you lose your job, and then your spouse gets paralyzed. And it's like, I'm the devil now because I won't give you that money back. And we're in difficult situations, and we're within our contracts, of course. But none of that matters if things get bad enough for people. And it was bad for everyone.
What do you tell partners going into deals now?
Well, it actually says in our corporate documents, this project is over when it's over.
Yeah.
We do not have a deadline. We don't have an ending deadline. We have a plan in place, and we hope for the best, and we work like crazy. And if things go great, we celebrate. And if they don't, we fight. And if they go worse than that, then we're going to set it for the long term.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like even when there's been crashes or market shifted or any type of recession, eventually we come back and real estate prices go higher. And with the housing shortage, I mean, people need to live everywhere. When COVID happened, I remember telling my real estate team, the real thing you need to watch out for is if massive amounts of people start dying.
Yeah.
Where they can't live in the houses because they're not around anymore. Because that supply and demand would be changing. But the opposite happened, where they brought rates down because they were shutting down the economy, and all these people that could work remotely decided, or could now work remotely, decided, I'm going to move to Texas, I'm going to move to Florida, I'm going to move to Utah.
Right.
And the market here in Utah went crazy.
Yeah.
And it hasn't gone down.
Well, the problem you're going to see worldwide, which Elon Musk has talked about a number of times, is most countries have populations that have the potential to collapse. And that's a bizarre thought. When 2 people get married and they're not going to have 2 kids.
Yeah.
They might not have any kids, right? There's the one-off that has 5 kids, but they're not normal. And we talk about immigration here in the United States as some love one extreme, some love the other.
Yeah.
But the reality is we have to have immigration. or our population will collapse too. Kids are not viewed as they once were.
Yeah.
My uncle had 8 kids, and I said, how do you do it with 8 kids? How do you do it with 8 kids? He was like 60 years old. I said, how did you do 8 kids? What were you thinking? And he goes, Mike, in my day, he goes, in today's world, people have possessions. In my day, we had kids. And I thought, man, there's some wisdom in that.
Yeah.
There's some wisdom in that. But the world doesn't think like that anymore.
Yeah, we want our nice cars and the houses are bigger than they've ever been.
Yeah.
And which is ironic.
Or smaller than they've ever been.
Yeah, that's true. Smaller and bigger. But I mean, a lot of families are having less kids and they still are buying these huge houses.
Yeah.
Which creates, that's a whole other thing, but it's kind of interesting to see that's even happened. That continues to happen, that they keep building.
Yeah, it's interesting to see a 4,000 square foot house with 2 bedrooms, right?
Yeah.
It's all living space.
Yeah. I want to talk about seller financing with you.
Okay.
It's my real, true love in real estate.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you let me know that it existed. The 4-offer spreadsheet in your book, I love that. I've recreated it.
That's fantastic.
And I'm actually in the process right now of creating a chat GPT.
That should be 6 off.
It should, yeah, it should be. Yeah.
Capital contribution to a project, trade. It should be a trade line, capital contribution line, and then the 4 traditionals. And there's a couple of ways you could really change that around.
It's so powerful. I had an experience last year where I sat down with a seller and their agent, and I went and slid it across to them, and I said, this is what I can do. And the best part about it is it takes away the guessing, because you've given them all the options that would work for you, but all of them work.
Right.
And they end up picking, this is the craziest thing, because everybody has a hot button, something that's really a big deal to them. And the hot button for them was they wanted to pay off debt. It didn't really matter about anything else. They just wanted to pay off debt. So they said, we want the down payment option. We want the big down payment. And I told them that no bank was going to be able to finance this right now because rates were 8%. And if you're going to go get a loan on a mobile home park, they're higher.
Right.
And so because their mobile home park had sat on the market, they were like, okay, let's figure this out. And so they took the large down payment, but the counter variable was the interest rate.
Right.
And I told them I can make 0% interest work. So they agreed to that. So we did a $300,000 down payment on a $900,000 purchase. We got a bunch of extra acreage in the back, and this is in Utah County.
This is still a 33% down. That's not bad for 0% interest.
Yeah.
And a higher and better use in the back with land.
Yeah, I think the book even talks about 50% sometimes, 75% to get something like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's always a risk involved, and I try to be pretty conservative on these, but we got 3.5 years at 0% interest. And even the debt paid on just that, it's almost a 60% return over those 3.5 years.
Right.
And that means by the time that our balloon comes up, we're going to owe like $420,000. And that's less than half of what the entire purchase price was. Yeah. Plus, we still have the ground. And that was one of the moments where I really started believing, where I knew I had already done this, but I had done it in a way that I wasn't sure how to get them to take any offer, right? I was trying to figure out what was important to them. And sitting down with them going through that, it was like I just stuck to what I gave them because I felt comfortable with that, and it worked. And I got paid a commission.
Yeah.
So,
well, in the crash, one of the things that we did some pretty cool land deals where people had land, and we had some of them were doing negative interest rates. So you'd buy a property, no money down, super low interest rate, and the seller would make a payment to you every month for 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, or there were triggers. Yeah. They would make a payment of X number of dollars a month. Say they were paying $8,000 a month on a property, you come along and now they only have to pay 2%, but they have to pay 2% until they have to pay a 2% interest rate to you. So it's a negative 2% to you until the market went up to here, or the property appraised for this, or interest rates dropped to this. You tied it to something. And there were guys making payments that were much smaller than the ones they were making. So they're grateful to do that. And that's risky because they could stop, and then it's a difficult thing where you already own the property, you can't foreclose on them.
Yeah.
But you could tether it to other collateral. You could tether it a number of ways. But it's the coolest technique out there when you really start to see all the different options.
So when you did your first negative interest rate deal, what was that conversation? What made you think, was it
You sit down with the seller who has $1 million property and it's worth $750.
Yeah.
And you say, hey, I'm going to take this $1 million and I've got a loan and it's a 20-year loan and I can't make the payment. Payment's $7,000 and it's killing me. It's eating me alive. Okay, well, what kind of a payment can you make? Well, gosh, I could probably do $3,000. Okay, well, we're going to do $3,000 until you're going to pay. I'm going to buy the property. I'm going to take over the debt because we had a down payment.
Yeah.
And you're going to pay me $3,000 until one of these three things happens. A month, $3,000 a month. Now cut your break. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. You never think you would see someone so grateful to pay you every month not to own their property. It's an income-producing raw piece of land, right?
Yeah.
In a way that most people have never contemplated.
But you probably saved some sellers because of that.
Oh, yeah.
Because they can make a $2,000 payment every month to avoid foreclosure.
Yeah.
But they weren't able to actually make like a $7,000 payment.
Right. And it's funny because they become your best cheerleader.
Yeah.
It's until I develop the property or until rates go down to 7%, the rate's 10%, and you go down to 7%. They call you, hey, rates dropped to 9%, man. I'm cheering them on. I want you to do well, but I'm cheering that rate. Hey, did you hear the rates are at 8.5%? And you're getting different phone calls.
Yeah.
Right? But it's just the business that you're in.
Yeah.
So, or the zoning changes, or there's a trigger there that makes it a win-win for you too.
Yeah. What I love about all of it is that you can do anything you really want. I have people who ask me about seller financing and they're trying to put a deal together. And then that's correct. You can do that.
Yeah.
You can do anything. You can ask for anything you want. You want to ask the car? Ask the car. You ask for whatever you want. I mean, you can ask for anything. And you just need to have both parties agree to it.
Right.
And so if you can come to an agreement on it, then everybody wins.
Yeah, the funnest discussions we had were the seller financing from the bank. Those were fun discussions. I figured out early on there's some options to get banks to lend to you without typical lending formats. And man, there's just all kinds of nuances that you don't think about until you're in a spot where things don't work. You have to really push yourself to think, okay, let's go outside the box here. Let's think outside the box. Let's pray for inspiration at the same time, right? Because there's got to be a way. Because you see that the super wealthy often make much more money in bad markets than they do in good ones.
Yeah.
Because they know the strategies other people don't know, and they know things that other people don't practice.
Zero downs. They're out there. People talk a lot about them.
Yeah.
I've done multiple of them. When you're talking to a seller in your experience, what do you feel like is the real reason why a seller's willing to take nothing down on a deal?
Most of the time, it's a life circumstance. I found, for example, I bought a duplex, again, in Utah County a couple of years ago for $1 down. And the only reason I gave him $1 was so that there'd be valid consideration for the contract as is required under the REPC here in Utah. So we gave him $1 on a cash flowing asset. And his whole point was, I can't take care of this. I got a drug addict in the basement. I'm pretty sure he's dealing drugs. I got someone upstairs who won't pay. I can't handle this. I just have to get out of this, have to move on with my life. Here's my payment. Wrap it, take it off my hands, service it. What do you need? What do I got to do? What needs to happen here for you to do this for me? Yep. And you do find people like that. They're out there. And so I think pretty often the zero down is a function of need or pain, but it can also be a function of intelligence. I own a free and clear property. Why would I want a down payment? I have to pay capital gains on that. If I get interest, my capital gains are delayed for as long as I don't receive that principal. But then you say, and you don't tell the seller this, but then you say, well, the interest I'm paying you monthly is taxed at a higher tax bracket than your capital gains would be on your down payment.
Yeah.
You don't make those nuances known to them, but you can do a counterpoint. Well, do you want to pay more taxes? What do you mean? Well, what's your capital gains tax bracket? What tax bracket are you in now? Well, it sounds like interest is a higher tax bracket. So shouldn't we do a 0% interest rate? If you truly want to not pay taxes, let's not pay you anything.
Which is funny because we're talking about zero down.
Yeah.
But you can make the same argument in any which direction on any of the variables. And typically when you have the conversation with the seller, you start discovering what's important to them. A lot of sellers are so attached to that sale price. They do just about anything if they don't have to have the sale price. Like if they can get the sale price they want.
Well, that's the neat part about it for me is there's about 30 terms that you can use in seller financing. Mm-hmm. And I always sit down with the seller, and one of my first questions always is, if I gave you a magic wand and you could get 2 or 3 things, what would they be? But you have to know that I get to manipulate everything else.
Yeah.
So what are your 2 or 3 things? And a lot of times it's price. It might be down payment. It might be whatever. But then there's all these other things that you can use. Interest rates, terms, balloons, timeframes, delayed closings, all kinds of things.
Extensions. I do.
Extensions.
That's one thing I do.
Requirement. I give you a down payment, but you're going to put it back in as a partner.
Yeah, that's great.
I need this big down payment. Well, I need a partner. So I'm going to give it to you, but you're going to give it back as a contribution to the project.
Yeah.
Do that all the time.
Great.
All the time.
And I mean, that way they don't have capital gain either, right? So do you really want to pay $100,000 in taxes? Or do you want to have a piece of this? And when we do a cash out refi, you get money for, tax free.
Yeah.
Can you wait 2 years?
Right.
Yeah, that's just so fascinating. So on the seller finance deals that are you still doing, besides getting some of the owners to go and put the money in as partners, are you doing any seller finance deals on any of your developments right now?
We do. And the biggest benefit of a seller finance typically is when it has a short balloon. Sellers will put up with almost anything for a short period of time. And the only reason I buy properties anymore, I'm not speculative in nature on almost anything. Mm-hmm. So I want my projects to be actionable.
Yeah.
So we'll do seller financing, and we've created some nuances, as you know, but most of them have a balloon they'll have a first trust deed. So I buy a piece of land from someone to give them a down payment. They have a first trust deed, and I can't get a construction loan until they're paid off. And they know that. And I'm the big developer, and I come in and I have to pay that off, and that's their guarantee that they're going to get. Now, there might be a balloon or a time frame behind that, but in a perfect world, we never get anywhere near that because we're replacing them with construction financing. Mm-hmm. The other thing we do is we do seller financing that converts. It's converting financing. So I have a $2.5 million piece of land. I might give somebody $1 million. Mm-hmm. They have a note for $1.5 million. It's a first trust deed until I qualify for a construction loan. Then that's released. It just vanishes and it's reconveyed. But it appears that $1.5 million appears as a capital contribution on our corporate documents. They get interest while they're waiting, but then they turn into a partner with a return once the project's underway and they know what's going to happen. So
you can treat them pretty well because the land's going to be a small amount of what the total value is going to be. And what
most of our land deals are 3.5, 4% of the future value of our assets. It's under 5%, unentitled raw.
And these landowners, they end up getting probably 15, 20% ownership leveraged.
Depends on the size of the land and what we're doing with it, but they get pretty handsome positions.
Yeah. And I like what you said about not being speculative, where going back to having the right to build a property, you're not closing until you know that you can build what you want to build.
Right.
And at that point, you've done enough due diligence that you're not worried about a random pipe that's putting water on your property.
Yeah, and that's why we go again to the use by right states, because you're guaranteed what you're going to get. We do take our sweet time closing because we want to make sure what's out there that we don't know about.
Yeah.
You can do as many third-party tests as you want, and that doesn't mean, we have a project where it's 27 acres. We did 45 boring holes, drilled 45 boring samples, but that's on 27 acres.
Yeah.
That's a little more than 1 an acre, right? So we ended up finding things that didn't get covered. We found an oil well that had been capped.
Gosh.
That was in the middle of all this pinyon pines and sagebrush, and nobody knew about it. We knew there were 6 wells, and they had been capped and treated. Mm-hmm. There was a 7th well that wasn't on the well map.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it's not cheap to cap a well.
So was it just capping, or they were filling it, capping?
No, we had to drill down 100 feet, and we had to pour a concrete casing 100 feet up.
Was this before or after you closed?
And we found this out after.
Okay.
Yeah, we were out there grading the 27 acres. And what's that? There's a well. We immediately pull the plans out, the geotechnical survey, we pulled out everything.
Yeah.
We pulled out the railroads. In this state, the railroads own all the oil wells, or a lot of them. They have the rights to some of this stuff, and wasn't on any map, any survey, any third party, anything.
Yeah.
And you just get to have $100,000 burger for lunch.
And if that's a small project, you might be done.
That could be, yeah. Well, and if it's a small project, you should have a reasonable assurance that you walked it.
Yeah.
It's hard to see everything on 27 acres.
Yeah.
And the problem was that wasn't something we couldn't have overcome, but it was right underneath the foundation.
So there wasn't a lot you had to do that regardless. There wasn't any type of, you'd have to read it.
We'd had to replat it. We'd had to entitle it.
So how much was it? $100,000?
It was $100,000. Actually, they quoted us 120, and that's right. We ended up being only about $70,000, so it was less than quoted because they ended up needing less concrete than they thought.
That was nice of them.
Yeah. Yeah, they wouldn't give us a quote. They said it's going to cost what it costs. Here's how much we charge per square foot or per linear foot, and here's how much the mud costs per yard, and here's the on top price. And too bad for you. You want to cap it or you don't.
Yeah, you want to build or you know. Do you want to just own 27 acres?
Do you want to lose a 42-plex or not?
So for me, when I started learning about seller financing, that was one of the moments where I really, I felt like the development, it's a huge skill. I do feel like development is a little bit, I don't want to say it's more complex than seller financing, but it definitely can be more complex. Seller financing, you will realize that that you're putting it together poorly, usually before you close, ideally.
Yeah.
Development, you could have lots of surprises. There's reasons why developers can. Daily surprises.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of operating involved in that. But they are pretty different as far as their functions, right? But where would you say seller financing, if you were to say the top 5 skills in real estate, where would you say that seller financing fits in there?
Most guys that do what I do, they don't do any seller financing.
Yeah.
They really don't. And that doesn't mean they can't or that they haven't. Most guys don't do that. Guys that do traditional capital stacks rarely consider seller contributions. I was invited to speak on a panel recently, and one of the questions was, how are you handling your capital stack now in this tough time? It's a tough time for private capital and financing. And we threw out a couple of ideas, and there were some stout people on the panel with me. There's some stout people in the room. And I said, man, the first thing we do is when I can't find money, I said, where does all the money go in this project? Well, it goes to the landowner, goes to the general contractor, goes to the architect, the engineer, the subcontractors, goes to the city. How many of those guys need work badly enough that they'll contribute a portion of it to have the work and then the benefits of ownership in the project? So we started involving subcontractors and general contractors. We have one project that we have, I think, 13 or 14 sub and GCs on, or the GC and subs as capital partners. And people in the room act like I was speaking French. Oh my gosh, where did you come up with that? And I had, do you know how many lunch requests I had after that? And can you take me, can I come down to your office? Can I, well, what do you like? I'll bring in some donuts. Oh my gosh, really? And I had one guy ask, what percentage of your capital stack typically comes from your subs and GC and third parties? Say, when we're doing it right, 40, 50% of our private equity capital stack comes from that group. And it's fun when you have 6 subs and you say, hey, you're going to put in X percent of your bid as a capital contribution, or you're not going to get the job.
Yeah.
It's a different perspective.
So maybe not seller finance, but definitely creative finance.
Yeah.
And it's actually like a whole next level.
Well, that's the thing. When you learn seller financing well enough, you can literally think about financing anything.
Yeah.
Anything comes up for sale for financing. I have architects that say, hey, I don't want to be paid a penny. Can we put it in as a partner? I want to be an owner in one of my projects at some point in my career. Can you imagine an architect doesn't own any assets?
Yeah.
The architect, engineers.
Build it for everybody else.
Yeah, lumber yards. Do you know how many lumber yards are willing to contribute their lumber?
And on a big building, you're talking about $500,000, $1 million in wood.
Yeah, and to look at it this way, every one of those guys is a seller of something to your project. Mm-hmm. They're not the land sellers as a standard seller finance, but they're selling general contracting skills. They're selling lumber. Mm-hmm. They're selling. I've got a guy that does piping, does all the pipes and all of that type of plumbing equipment. He'll donate 100% of everything to any job that I want. And as a capital contribution, not a donation that he doesn't get back, but it's a capital contribution.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll do that all day long. Or has this been my whole career?
But that's a good point, right? He's had decades where he's been doing this and he doesn't have any assets. And everybody looks at it and says, okay, put down 25% on this single family home or on this fourplex or something. And like, that's how you get in. But on these big projects, the barrier feels so high until somebody says, hey, you can own 15% of this, 10% of this by throwing in what your cost is.
Yeah. I mean, we have a $100,000 minimum on our projects, and that's sometimes someone might get a third of 1%. Mm-hmm. They're like, I don't know if that's a good deal for me. This is a $180 million project. Yeah. Think about how much did you think you were going to get for $100,000?
Yeah.
How much did you think you were going to get? We need $40 million in cash. You're bringing $100,000. What should you get?
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible though for all of these people who have been working and trying to build wealth, and they just haven't felt like there's been a good way. And then everyone just says, "Oh, just put money in the S&P and let it, sit and wait a few decades."
Yeah, the other trigger for seller financing is always, what are you going to do with the money that I give you? You don't want to seller finance because you want me to pay you cash. What are you going to go do with that?
Yeah.
And seller financing for 99% of those guys to have some cash, a lesser tax burden, and a higher payment is much better than what they were going to go do with it.
Yeah.
I have people, you know how many times I've been told that we were going to buy a boat? I'm buying a $400,000 property. We were going to buy a boat. What boat? Sure. Oh, you must have the brochure. Oh, yeah. I look down at the bottom. Here's the amount of the boat, and that becomes the down payment. Oh, here, I'll buy your boat. Here's the down payment. Let's finance the rest.
Because that's like, the hot point.
Oh, there's a reason people sell.
Yeah.
And that the ways in are, what's your two or three most important things? And why are you selling? You've owned this land, my landowners, for example. Excuse me. You've owned this land for how long?
Yeah.
Why would you sell it now? Why today? Well, because of, and those are your leverage points.
Boat, new car. Maybe they want to pay off their house.
I'm going to retire, and I only have this much as a payment, and I need this much to live off of. So you're going to, hopefully you die before your money runs out.
Yeah.
You know what that does to people when you say that? Well, hopefully you'll die before your money runs out. Or we could just pay you till you die.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Oh, well, we can sell or finance it. Well, when you come build that apartment complex, aren't you going to pay me off? Well, I can move it to another asset. We can re-collateralize your debt. Oh.
Which you're now creating. This is like a secondary asset in a way, right? Like they're thinking apartment building, or they're thinking house, whatever, as an asset. But you're creating almost like what they do with like annuities,
right?
Where I'm going to pay you this forever, but you get a piece of
right.
This.
Well, here's the thing: if a guy's got a $600,000 seller finance note, let's say I buy a $1 million property, $400K down, $600K first trust deed, I go get my construction loan. That's going to give him the $600K. Mm-hmm. I don't give it to him. I go buy another piece of property with that cash. Then he becomes the first trust deed over there. We just move him.
Yeah.
If he doesn't receive that principal, it's a moving piece of collateral for him. What he wants and craves the most is that payment. Mm-hmm. He wants that payment more than anything.
So you can give that to them.
Yeah.
And when you do that, I mean, you're just, again, going back to the 4-offer spreadsheet. What's really important to you? What do you want?
That's right. Yeah. It's just discussions, man. You got to learn how to have discussions. You got to learn to be solutions-based. You got to learn to be able to say, whatever this guy wants, There's a way around it if I think my way through it on the vast majority of them. And then you got to be patient because sometimes you'll say, hey, this is what I can do for you. Well, I won't accept that. Okay, well, here's my number. Yeah. This will still be available. I might drop it down a little bit, but call me back. Yeah. You know how many times I've gotten a call back a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year later? It happens. Yeah.
Because a lot of these sellers, they're also, they ended up with this ground. They don't, like for one reason or another, maybe they inherited it.
They weren't savvy to get the ground, most of them.
Yeah.
They tripped into it, right? It's an old farmer who paid the long haul. And yeah, he did great. And he was a great steward of the land. Yeah. But he wasn't financially savvy enough to buy that land today. If he had to buy that today, he wouldn't be able to. It wouldn't happen. Yeah.
And so they end up with this land. They have, right, a bird in the hand. They have you that's saying, I'll buy it this. And then they're thinking, oh, I don't want to pay agents and pay for all the other things that I have to pay for. So there's a lot of motivation to go to you because they know exactly what they're going to have.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I get told no. And then 8 months later, I've been under contract 3 more times and nobody performed and I'm sick of it. Come on over here. Let's do that deal. Get that call all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. My first mobile home park I bought, I was the fourth person to put under contract. And we bought it. This is actually kind of fun. We bought it for $230. And the owner had some ground down the street for sale. And so I asked him for that too. And he threw it in because he was so frustrated that neither of them were selling. Yeah. And so we got like $50,000 of ground, 3 acres of ground in this little town and the whole mobile home park for $230. And it appraised at $300. Yeah. Right. Like right away. It's like, whoa, we're in a good spot. But I mean, today it's worth $2.5 to $3 million. Right. And it's just so interesting. I think some of the people before me were wholesalers. So they kept locking it up. Yep. And this guy was just like, I'm done with this.
It's got to be maddening if you're a seller.
But for you could probably feel pretty confident because you're going to give him a fair offer. And if he takes it, great. If he doesn't, you're going to find another deal. Yeah. And having that confidence allows you to not stay up at night thinking, oh, I should have just given him more money. Right? I mean, if it was the last deal you had to do, right? Then you feel like it mattered a little bit more. But because you're always looking for deals, it doesn't hurt quite as bad when one doesn't work out.
No, that's the point is you have to have a lot of business going. Yeah. You'll drive yourself nuts.
Yeah. So to just wrap this up, because I don't want to take too much more of your time. We probably got another 10 minutes or so, but I want to know, in today's market, with what you're seeing, what are the 3 big opportunities in real estate?
Oh, they're painful, but I'll share them with you. Yeah. Anybody that starts a multifamily project today is going to pay their dues. They're probably overpay on interest rates. They're going to have too much equity. They might have to overpay wherever the equity comes from on top of paying the debt. But you will not, in my personal opinion, will not regret when that finishes. I came up with a new slogan today. I was doing a video. We don't pick we're not worried about when we start. We're worried about when we finish. What's it going to be like when we finish? So one of the things we're trying to do right now is where is the housing need going to be? For example, I got some projects in Dallas, Fort Worth, and the lease up down there is brutal. They way overbuilt. But the last 2.5 years, there's been almost no starts because nobody can get financed. And there's a constant demand. Same thing with Salt Lake. There's a massive oversupply. But the demand hasn't waned, and it's not going to wane ever. Yeah. So it's going to catch back up. But so because things have been so hard to finance, start what you can. Fight, start what you can. And that's going to be a payday for you. Some of these projects take me 2.5 years. What would you do to have pristine, brand new, beautiful buildings 2.5 years from now? Yeah. And it's unbelievable. And even here in Utah, where there's been an oversupply, we just got a CO on 155 units probably 2.5, 3 weeks ago. And we got permission to pre-lease and have a pre-occupancy on the first 2 floors. That was a hat trick I'll have to tell you about sometime. How you get occupancy before your certificate of occupancy. Yeah. That was a stellar piece of negotiating right there. But we have almost 60 tenants in 10, 11 weeks in Utah here where most people think there's an oversupply. So you build the right stuff, you have the right amenities, you're in the right location, you have the right offers, and you can still lease things up and do very well with them.
Do you feel like with the construction that you've had to dig in a little bit more and think, what is a tenant going to want being here?
Yeah. Yeah, you have to look at the bigger picture. One of the best things you can do when you put a piece of property under contract and you're going to hopefully do a project there, you've got to walk anything within a 10, 12, 15-mile radius. You have to walk it. You have to get an appointment and walk the asset and take a look at, that's one of the best things developers do is they walk other assets. What am I doing? What am I seeing? What am I participating in? If you think you're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
You always have to be looking for other options.
Because it's very specific to that property, right? So when you go to that area, you're walking around for 20 minutes. What you're going to find there is going to be different than any other location and what you're going to find at those locations.
Yeah. There's a project in a city in Utah that I'm not going to mention. It was targeted towards the 20-something male. They're like, we're going to be unique. We're going to design it. We're going to build it. How a man in his 20s, more likely single, what they would appeal to, and this is who we're going to cater to, this is who we're going to market to, and it has been an absolute bomb. Absolute bomb. That doesn't mean they can't retool the property.
Yeah.
But you better know what you're doing. You better know. Sometimes when you get very specific and narrow like that, you win. Other times it can be a complete disaster.
Yeah.
But you have to know your market.
It seems like what's mainly been built has been that 3-bed, 2-bath kind of setup. That's been like what's really popular. With the changes though, and people having kids later, or people not having kids at all, now you're starting to see studios and the micro units. And you're building some of those micro units.
We have some micros, yeah.
Was that something that you were a believer right away? Or?
Well, we weren't sure. The thing that happened to me, this was probably would have been in 2019, 2018. I had a young guy come work for me, and he's like, why don't we do 3 bedrooms? And I said, why? And he goes, because you can get more rent. And I go, how do you figure? He goes, I live in a 3-bedroom. And when you add the aggregate of the 3 of us, it's a higher rent than you'd rent to a married person. I'm like, that's called student housing for professionals. So we don't do student housing. And he goes, well, we're paying, gosh, I'm in a 3-bedroom and we're paying $850 a bedroom.
Yeah.
And the light went on and I said, gosh, I can build something for him or people in his situation that the rent would be the same or slightly more for him to be his own roommate, not to have to be with 2 other roommates. And that's where we said, okay, we went by city, started asking what are roommates in the 2nd and 3rd bedrooms paying? How do we deliver a singular product to appeal to those guys?
Yeah.
Because there's thousands of them.
Yeah.
And that's where the minis came in for us. And we have a tiny, tiny, tiny mini. We have a medium-sized mini. Then we have a studio. And we cater to those guys, and they love it. Those are oftentimes the things that rent first for us.
Yeah, because when you think about all the amount of people that are around my age that are not married yet, or even like a few years younger than me that aren't married yet, they're professionals. They probably make okay money.
Yeah.
But they don't really want to have a roommate anymore. They've had a roommate for the last 15 years or their whole lives.
Yeah. And we're even seeing retired couples that live somewhere else, but they have kids in another place and they want to have a home base there. And instead of renting an apartment or renting a hotel or an Airbnb every time they come, they're like, we're going to keep an apartment here. We come here and stay for a month.
Yeah.
And we can use it. Or in Moab, for example, there's about, I don't know what it is, 10,000 people at a time from Europe. In Moab. I rode the elevator with someone this morning. I had no idea what they were saying, and I had no idea what language it was either. And I just kind of chuckled. Those guys will come out, some of them, 3 and 4 and 5 months a year. They'll rent an apartment for the entire year.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be something big. They're not here for the apartment. They're here for what Moab has to offer. So there's a different dynamic out there that you can cater to. And I wouldn't do something just to cater to people from Europe.
Yeah.
But if it fits in all these other micro segments of the market, it can be a winner.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a type of inventory that hasn't really existed.
Right.
And there's a lot of people who would be interested in that.
And Moab knows it. We have 2 42-plexes and a 36-plex. And in our 2 42-plexes, they said 70% of the tenants have to be employees in Moab or Grand County.
Oh, wow.
And the other 30% can be anyone.
Yeah.
And the other building can be anyone. So they know that people that don't live anywhere near Moab are taking their inventory.
With all of this multifamily construction that's happening, do you think that it sets up the stage for a future of condo conversions?
You know, that's been a tough one because it used to be, I've been around long enough that you used to build condos and you'd never build apartments. Mm-hmm. And I never thought that would change because condos, you'd always pay more for, but then when interest rates got so low, the condo prices were well below what the value of a unit would be for rent. Mm-hmm. And it really hasn't changed back. I know somebody who built something in one of the markets that has struggled mightily with lease up. Yeah. And he did a condo conversion on his brand new building. As he was getting his certificate of occupancy, he did a condo conversion. Brand new building. And it bombed. It absolutely bombed. And I was cheering for him. I was hoping for him. And I was watching because I had quite a few assets in that market. I'm like, this could be interesting. But yeah, the condo thing hasn't picked back up again, which is strange to me because if people will live and rent in something small, why wouldn't you have a mortgage payment and own it? Yeah. It doesn't make sense because the numbers aren't too far off. I mean, some of this stuff, the rents are getting high enough that it might justify a mortgage payment as a condo. Yeah. But again, when rates are this high, it's tough for people to swallow.
Yeah, I get that payment. I think as investors, we're used to looking at real estate as being something that's somewhat stagnant because we buy a house that's 100 years old and it rents, right? Yeah. But now we're in this spot where we're seeing things like these apartment buildings being built at a rate that they hadn't been built ever here in Utah, especially, or states like Texas, right? Right. And talking about the micro units, I think we might need to give more credit to the fact that this is changing a lot faster than what we think it is. Right. Because people's wants are changing and everyone needs a place to live. But now instead of thinking I have to get a 3-bedroom house because I have 2 kids, it's different. Right. They're thinking I can go and buy, or if they're not married, they might go for a micro unit and they want to have the flexibility so they won't go and buy. So then they don't want to have a condo that they have a mortgage on, which for us, we think, we want to own everything. But there's a lot of people that they're more than happy.
Don't want to own anything, yeah.
Yeah, and I also think there's a trend of a lot of people online talking about don't own real estate and stay flexible so you can move around, that kind of stuff. I mean, Grant Cardone, right? I've mentioned him, and he says, primary residence is not an investment. Don't ever buy a house to live in, just buy investment properties. But he's a big apartment guy.
Yeah, he is.
And I think it's funny because if everyone does exactly what he does, then we could all end up living in the apartments that he's building or you're building. Right.
Yeah, it's kind of self-serving on the one hand, but on the other hand, you can say, man, if I had all this money in a better vehicle than a principal residence, but I don't know if people are disciplined enough to take the money they would pay in a house payment every month and do something.
I don't think they are.
And they'll end up with nothing. Yeah. The house, they'll end up with something. Mm-hmm. But you see so many people retire that can't afford the house they live in anymore, even if it's free and clear.
Yeah.
There's a lot of states where property taxes are bad enough. Property taxes and insurance are more than someone can handle on a free and clear house. Yeah. Yeah. And it makes sense for them to rent.
And that's not getting better.
No. And it's not going to get better.
There was a county here in Utah that I think their school district is asking for almost 25% increase, 29% increase on property taxes. They're like, we got to keep up with inflation. And everyone's like,
yeah, we have properties. We just got a whole slate of our property taxes in one of our states, the notices, and some of them are 18% higher than last year. And this is not a market that's explosive in appreciation. You sit there and think, what is going on here? And there's counties in this particular state where citizens are doing class action lawsuits against the counties. So what's happening is the county's saying, how much money do we need for our budget? Okay, now where do we go get it? They can't print money like the federal government, just keep going into debt. So they have to do these unruly changes on the property taxes.
But it doesn't seem like there's ever a stop to it. It's not even like they're trying to just keep up with inflation. It seems like it's always like, let's go get as much as we can.
We had a property in one of these counties, and we filed a lawsuit against the county, and they came and dropped our property tax valuation by almost 40%. 40%.
Makes you wonder how they're figuring out the values.
Yeah. No, it's. I think it's all based on what their budget is, not based on actual property values.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there ever going to be some type of balance with that, or is this something that you think we?
Well, no, the problem you have is government's so top heavy. All you have to do is do a development to see that.
Yeah.
The brain damage you have to go through to get a building permit in some places and to get projects developed, and then the extensive number of fees that come in, and then there's no services behind it in some cases. No, it's not ever going to change because government will never be responsible. It just never will.
Yeah, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
I don't want to take too much more of your time, but I'm very curious to see how some of these trade and tariff policies play out, especially how they impact real estate. And it's interesting. It always seems like it's a struggle on the development side dealing with government, and every year you're reminded of it when you have to pay them. And even with all of that, though, you still really have money in real estate.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. The tariff thing has been really tough for me to watch. I'm an avid fan of it on the one hand. And there's countries that will charge us 100% tariff to the United States, and they don't have a tariff coming in. And I think a large part of what happened with the tariff were the threats of a tariff to get them to remove or lower their tariffs. I think the goal should have been from the beginning to have a matching tariff.
Yeah.
Listen, you don't want a tariff coming to the United States, don't charge one going back out. And that's only for your first percentage of goods. After that, the tariff increases unless we have matching sales in your country. So you're going to promote U.S. products or you're going to pay higher tariffs.
Because you want to keep that.
Yeah, we're not your bank anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's great, but it has really stalled what many of us thought would be an explosive change to what we had in the prior administration.
Yeah.
And yeah, inflation's under wraps at the moment and the economy's growing. But man, you want that interest change so bad, right? You want that, see that interest improve so bad that your teeth hurt.
Are you worried at all that when interest rates do come down that the competition is going to increase just like it has in the past, and you're going to still find deals, but it's kind of nice right now. There's nobody else fighting for the deals that you're fighting for.
You tell me what's the worst problem. There's more guys trying for the piece of land that you're buying, or the one you own, the land you own, you can't finance.
Yeah.
Which one? Which one's better?
I mean, the best would be having your cake and eating it too. You get them under contract.
There's a middle ground. Because in those good markets, when you find those properties and put them under contract, it's a sweet, sweet thing.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing. You're going to see more zone changes. You're going to see more forced. Like we were just down in Las Vegas deciding if we were considering opening Vegas as a market. And we found out down there about 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago actually, that before our trip, that there's forced legislation coming that was going to allow and cause cities in Nevada to allow a percentage of their commercial zones to allow multifamily or mixed use. Wait for this, as a use by right in a non-use by right state. So Nevada's not a use by right state.
Yeah.
But this one particular sliver is a use by right. So you're seeing that kind of stuff happening. You're going to see more and more and more of that. So, man, if rates get good and we get a little more competition, I'll always out hunt the competition. We'll always find those cracks and crevices. We'll find the nuances. That's why we've done so many projects in Ogden, for example.
Yeah.
They changed some of their commercial zones and didn't announce it. 5 of their commercial zones allowed multifamily as a use by right. Straight multifamily didn't have to be mixed. And we found out, I feel like some days we were the first to find out. And now we're on our 14th, 15th, and 16th projects up there with 1 or 2 more to go behind that. It's been an unbelievable opportunity for us. And we probably had 8 or 9 or 10 deals under contract before other people started realizing. And I mean, we were going and buying stuff that had been on the market for a year with no offers.
And nobody knew about
straight commercial.
That change happened.
And you drive by now and it's a nice big apartment complex.
Yeah. So you've been all over Ogden and you've been going to other cities as well. What are the 3 states or metros that people should be looking at?
I don't want to sound too excited, but anything in Utah. Okay. Literally anything in Utah. Get your foot in the door.
With Salt Lake,
and then closer, the Wasatch Slalom, I call it, from Ogden, and you could even go as far as Tremont down to Santaquin, or even further down out of Nephi.
Yeah.
That whole corridor, anything you find in there is going to be gold. Anything. And then anything within an hour of a major city in Utah. So you look at St. George, how much it's grown, but it's not just that. Look at all the growth around it.
Yeah.
It's been staggering. And Utah's just going to be like that. There's so many good things about Utah. So Utah is an unbelievable market for us. Texas is a hard one because I thought it was going to be this good of a market. But they are. When you start a project and you finish it 2.5, 3 years later, 3.5 years later, and property taxes are up 35%, how do you underwrite to that?
Yeah.
How do you underwrite to a 35% property tax change?
You can't.
And your option is to sue the county, which we've done.
Yeah.
So it's really, but I think our next frontier, I'll tell you what our next frontier is going to be tertiary markets, not secondary markets, tertiary markets. We're going to create networks of them.
Is this like what you were talking about, the Kemmerer, like areas where you have workers that are coming in?
Yeah, and Kimmerer doesn't hit our sweet spot because it's too small. But we're looking for tertiary markets and networks of them. So we're looking for things that are within 2 hours of a major metropolitan market.
Can you give an example of just even if it's not one that you're looking at specifically, but what?
Yeah, like Beaver, Utah. Beaver, Utah is in a great place, but who wants to build in Beaver and who wants to, but places like this, and I don't know what the population in Beaver is, but places like that need housing too. And it costs 10 or 15% more to build there, and rents are 10 or 15% less than Utah County, so nothing gets built.
Yeah.
But you walk into the city and the county and you say no building permit fees, no impact fees, and no property taxes for 15 years, and I'll come. And that type of a formula is enough to underwrite a project.
And you basically hedge because you can get all that in writing.
It's the multiplier of the net operating income.
But then in 15 years, the
rents have gone up
the rents
enough.
have gone up, growth's up, and you're already there.
Yeah, and once the city does that a couple of times, they won't do it for everyone else.
Yeah.
So people drive in, hey, where'd that big apartment complex come from? Oh, they didn't pay taxes and there's no fees. Well, I want that too. And sorry, the city won't do it again.
Yeah, that is very, very.
So we're literally going to tertiary markets saying, how badly do you need housing?
Are you worried about financing in those markets? Because I know that's one of the things that.
Well, yeah, we've got all kinds of cool things. I should tell you about it more sometime. We're going to talk about it in September.
Yeah. Oh, I'll be there. I love
Yeah.
that. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, you bet.
This is great.
Always a pleasure.